Where does Overwatch go from here? Hey and welcome, I'm Hammeh, and now that we're entering Overwatch's third holiday season, the community at various levels after Blizzcon 2018 is feeling a little flat, it seems. This is around many different topics, in-game balance and meta, lore, culture and content in and outside of the game, but I think it's broadly speaking how Overwatch feels to play at various levels of competitive right now and where it might be going in terms of both the game and the wider culture around it. Now, various content creators and community personalities have talked about this recently, and many of you in the comments of my videos have asked me for my take. So in this video, I'm going to do just that. It's going to be focused around topics. The timecodes are in the description below if you want to skip. As we come to the holiday season, I'm going to talk about things, firstly, to start with, because I like starting positively, that Overwatch has going good for it right now. Now, I love Overwatch. I'm not pretending everything is fine by any means. This is not being a Blizzard apologist or defender at all costs. Overwatch is nearly 3 years old. Come 2019, it'll be third anniversary event, and our community is one that cares. If people didn't care, there wouldn't be such debate and discussion about many things so often in so many different places around the game, be it game balance, lore, and other things. So that's a good thing. Overwatch is by no means dying, and any video that sticks that as a title, I will disagree with on that point alone. Now, esports is doing well. That is important for Overwatch fans of all kinds, not just competitive esport players or fans. New content for the game is released on a regular basis. You can mark in your calendar to the week when new Overwatch heroes and maps are probably going to turn up, as well as a couple of animated shorts a year, and of course we have the in-game events happening on a regular basis too. Overwatch as a brand and as a product, beyond the game, beyond the competitive, beyond the Overwatch League and things, is in a very healthy place. Now, for those who feel that Overwatch League and esports detracts from efforts elsewhere, it is important. If you want lore, shorts, whatever you love about the game, you want a healthy game, period. And esports and the wider profile of Overwatch is important for that. When you have brands like Toyota, Sour Patch Kids, HP, Omen, Intel, big names sponsoring the Overwatch League, including things like Toyota that are beyond endemic sponsors, beyond sponsors that might be seen as being inside esports or very natural pairings with gaming, then it shows that the future is healthy. These big companies don't sign up, don't sponsor for things like this if they don't see some kind of long-term plan and stability. That actually goes for merchandising as well. I'm going to quickly mention Overwatch Lego, Overwatch Nerf, Overwatch Funko, Overwatch Hasbro, that Mercy action figure we've just seen recently. Again, these companies would have seen a long-term future and a very stark position as to where Overwatch is. They work in the longer term. You don't produce a toy overnight. These companies work 6 months to a year, to years out in some cases. Blizzard has shown them a future, but what future is that and what will we see of it? I'll talk more about that later. So outside how much we play and enjoy the game and have done for years, there are many things to be positive about. However, why are people feeling a little bit flat? Why is the Overwatch community feeling a bit funny right now, particularly in terms of content creators, but also things that pop up every now and then? I wanted to talk about 4 briefly. I'm going to talk about meta and in-game feel, competitive play environment, and how I feel that that could change. I'm also going to talk about lore, culture and content in and outside of the game, outside of competitive and the core experience, and then also talk, while I'm talking about where Overwatch can go and should go and how we might see that from here, a little bit about the community and Blizzard and our relationship with them, because that also affects many of the things that I've just mentioned. First things first, meta and in-game feel. Now, the last few months, the hot topic for everyone has been Brigitte, Doomfist and stun meta, and also goats. Now, by goats, I'm talking about 3 tank, 3 support, that kind of combination that was made popular in various Overwatch contenders and competitive formats, and then as anything does in esports or competitive formats, or the competitive game comes into in-game in terms of the competitive ladder and people sort of picking it up and wanting to try and run it. Now, I get why people don't like Brigitte, Doomfist and Stun, particularly in a first-person shooter, team-based or otherwise. This element of control can feel frustrating for people. Now, what I will throw out there is, does this feel better or worse to you than other metas in the past? Now, don't put your rose-tinted spectacles, your sepia, lovely the past is wonderful spectacles on here, or your contact lenses in. There was triple tank, there was dive meta, now we have goats, 3 tank, 3 sub. Whenever there are new heroes, they will bring other challenges and metas will arise around them. In a game like Overwatch, I'll be honest with you, there is never balance. And that, in some ways, is a good thing. There will always be times where your hero of choice is better, worse, on top, suppressed, or you know what, just in the middle, just in a healthy place. Now, I'm not saying that people saying, oh, Brigitte is bad, or I hate the feel of Doomfist are wrong. I'm not giving Blizzard a pass on balance in any way, shape or form. I'm just giving the context. We have to understand there are always going to be ups and downs. We as a community, and I'll come on to it later, have to be cognizant. We have to know about this, and we have to know that things will rise, things will fall, things will feel good, things will feel bad, and Blizzard will try with us to work with it. We cannot keep beating Blizzard around the head with this. We can by all means constructively say what is feeling good for us, what isn't feeling good for us, and we always have to try and make sure that we look at things through our prism our viewpoint as much as we do other people's, and that includes mine. That includes professional Overwatch League players. That includes very, very, very big Overwatch League streamers and content creators. What they say compared to what you may experience feel in-game. So my experience, for example, in-game, I'm not a pro Overwatch League player. I'm not even a GM player. I'm not even a Masters player. My experience of Brigitte, Doomfist and Stun at very best Diamond, at very lowest recently Gold, will be very, very different to a lot of the content creators I watch and enjoy and I'm a part of. So just bear that in mind when you watch content creators. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong in terms of expressing how you feel, but everyone's experience is going to be a bit different depending on how they play. So good news for you with Ash's release and with the changes to Brigitte and Doomfist and things like that, and maybe when the next hero comes out early next year, we are going to see a swing in the meta again, maybe away from goats. Okay, whatever we feel about the meta and however that may swing and however Blizzard can address and change it, Blizzard are acting on that, and there will be times where the meta doesn't feel good to you or me in future particularly, but the competitive play environment persists over the top of meta, however the meta swings and flows, however in-game feels with new heroes and new metas. Group Finder has helped in some ways, but I firmly believe that you can introduce guilds, you can try and introduce a role queue, even though Overwatch revolves around people being able to switch heroes in game. So a role queue, how do you queue as one hero? And then how do you set the balance of different classes in a game? That is a challenge which has always made role queue harder for Overwatch, with the focus on switching in-game against something static like a MOBA, like League of Legends. I still believe though, that any feature that Blizzard may introduce will not help as much or should be introduced alongside a firm attempt to set an idea of how people should conduct themselves in competitive game formats and attempt to move the community towards that. Quality of environment perhaps above access to competitive. This is not Blizzard telling you what heroes to play or tell you to play 3 DPS or 2 DPS or 1 tank or whatever kind of combination you want. But I think this is a philosophy. This is a conduct and a pushing forward of the community, and we ourselves are partially responsible for this as well. This is challenging ourselves in the community. This is Blizzard challenging us and us challenging ourselves in the community to better ourselves as players and teammates. Now what Blizzard can do is try and introduce things, structures, statistics maybe, that will help us look at that. And as a community, we have to own that and not tear each other to pieces over it, and acknowledge that this is trying to make the play environment better. So firstly, Blizzard challenging us challenging ourselves to be better players in a competitive environment. I'm not talking about quick play here, I'm not talking about arcade, I'm talking about competitive 6v6. When you press that button and queue. I think that the philosophy of Blizzard, it's been very important, and it is one of the reasons that Overwatch has become so fantastic and what it is one of access. That's very important to them, I think. It's one that does Blizzard credit. A variety of heroes with different skill curves and different ways to play. A Mercy, a Symmetra, a Soldier, a Diva, a Torbjorn with a static turret, a Genji. All of these different ways of playing are important, and they've given many different people a way to come into Overwatch, including, as I've said, people who may not have played team shooters before. They may have liked the look of the characters, the lore, the story, the world, and played a team shooter for the first time, found a hero they can play. Whatever hero it is, the access element is important. But Overwatch is now nearly a 3-year-old game, with a community, many of whom have been playing it on and off for nearly 3 years. Now, in Heroes of the Storm, I cannot queue for a competitive mode until I have at least 16 heroes that are level 5 or higher. This is in effectively solo queue. So I need to have played sufficient time on 16 different heroes. Now, if I've played sufficient time on 16 different heroes before I compete, then that broadly means that I have to have some experience of playing as a tank, of playing as a brawler, of playing as a sort of a DPS class, playing as a specialist, playing as a support or healer. It forces me initially into breadth before I can specialise. That gives me all-around game experience before I go into modes. Now I know that there are things unique to MOBAs, Heroes of the Storm. You can't change your hero mid-game, in Overwatch you can. But the philosophy there is saying you need to be familiar with all of the different roles to a degree before you get put into an environment where you may not be able to play your favourite role or hero all the time. Before you compete, you need to be able to have some breadth to your gameplay. Now, I don't think there's anything personally wrong with that. In Overwatch, you can enter competitive with such a narrow hero pool, even a hero pool of one hero, that you will cause your team challenges if that hero for any reason is taken. So there's two things here. Us challenging ourselves to maybe step outside of our comfort zones, and Blizzard giving us the systems to do that in a way that means that we can do it in a constructive way. And then us as a community also have a challenge that we can't tear people down for trying to step outside of their comfort zones. And I will talk about the hidden profile and how that helps and hinders all of this in a bit. I think that's important. Now, of course, Heroes of the Storm, other MOBAs have drafts. Teams ideally come together hero by hero to pick a good composition. Before the team is locked in, it's done in a period of time lasting minutes before a game starts. You then can't change hero in game. So I know there's not a perfect comparison. It doesn't stop people going against what the team consensus is. It doesn't prevent insta-locking a hero. In Overwatch, you switch heroes in the middle of the game, and that's important. I don't have all the answers. I know what the challenges are. But how can Blizzard by systems or education and we ourselves challenge ourselves to be better players and improve the competitive entry and education experience? Should Blizzard now prioritize education and community improvement above access to competitive? And what can we do as community and as players ourselves to help that, to help each other and to be better teammates? This is my second point. What does a good game of Overwatch look like? Is it every person for themselves or a team coming together to win the game? Now, often problems are caused, and I've talked about this ad infinitum, so I'm going to be quick here about it, by the desires of the individual, me, conflicting immediately with the team, everyone else, and whether that social interaction is solved within a 30 to 60 second setup period. I want to learn DPS, so I'm going to play my Soldier 76 with a private profile. It's maybe not as good as my main tank, but I want to do it. On the other side, I want to win, so I can see your public profile. I don't want you trying your Soldier 76 that you have less competitive experience on and putting my win at risk. Now, there are pros and cons. I'm not going to say that either of those is right or wrong. This is not that simple. But as a community, as a bunch of people playing Overwatch in competitive, particularly solo queue, that is the situation that very often arises. I'm not going into one-trick debates or similar. The group finder has helped this, but has not solved things. And it never can. No one system can. But the ultimate factor I feel here is Blizzard drawing some kind of line or definition on how we should aim to conduct ourselves or play in competitive. Now, past Blizzard statements on this sort of philosophy has been play what you want as long as you're trying to win and as long as you're trying to play as a team. But Blizzard can't dictate meta. No one wants to be dictated to exactly what to play, and there is, here is the meta, and then there are people saying, oh, meta slaves, groupthink, anti-one tricks, anti-people playing their favourite hero. That debate has been done to death. But I feel that Blizzard have never really stepped in and says, here is how you should play. And here is how you should play as a philosophy. I think inclusion, again, is something that Blizzard have always wanted. They've wanted people not to feel that they can't play what they want in competitive. But this is now a 3-year-old game. Blizzard can be a bit more bold here, I think, and challenge us to push ourselves forward. They can help define what forward is, but ultimately as individuals, it's always up to us to try and come together about it. Now, there are many things I don't like about League of Legends, and Riot have been in the news for a lot of reasons recently. I've played my fair share of League in the past, a lot of MOBAs. I play a whole bunch of games outside of first-person shooters, including MOBAs. One thing I will praise Riot for is the Summoner's Code and the baseline expectation that sets. They're not afraid to try to set a standard of how you should be aiming to conduct yourself as a teammate. While we all carry a diverse set of individual ambitions and expectations into a game of League of Legends, first point of the Summoner Code states, once we hit the field, we're part of a team. For better or for worse, our fates are intertwined. When the game gets going, you have to make a choice between being a positive force for your team or contributing to your own demise. Being a good team player begins at Champion Select. I would actually argue, stepping outside of this, it begins before Champion Select. It begins before you hit the competitive button to play competitive. Be open-minded when considering the needs of your team. If you're the last one to pick, try to feel a niche in your team that hasn't already been filled. If everyone is picked and something stands out as a deficiency in your team composition, try asking for another player to fill the gap, or change roles to embrace that responsibility yourself. Remember that by taking on a role you don't normally play, you'll learn more about more unfamiliar champions and increase your own skill level. Now, stepping outside of that, I know there are challenges. MOBAs are different to Overwatch. I think that being a good player in Overwatch starts before you hit the competitive button. You know what can happen in competitive games, and you want to be a better player for yourself, to challenge yourself to be forward and for the team. I think Blizzard should say that to us. Now, by no means am I saying that Riot and League of Legends is way much better in terms of in-game experience than Overwatch. Every game, every multiplayer game where people come together and solve this social contract of putting the team above the individual will have flaming and stupidness. I'm going to put that lightly. But what Riot are saying is that you should want to contribute to your team's success, and that starts before you even queue, before you even start playing. If you want to compete, you need to support your team. If you want to support your team, you need to be able to contribute to its success in a variety of different ways. Now, I know that League has things like a role finder. That maybe is challenging in Overwatch for the reasons I've already said. I'm not talking about just pure trolling here, by the way. Pure trolls should get passed out and filtered by system and reporting and mechanics. I think one of the problems also is anonymity, and that comes to other things. Now, modern gaming provides more convenience and yet more anonymity. When I used to play Team Fortress Classic as a clan or team 15 years ago, again, showing my age, Servers were private. There wasn't automated matchmaking like you have in Overwatch. If you did something stupid, if you acted like a prat, you'd be banned from competitive servers, and those servers were the only ways you could go and play in a competitive pickup group pug context. Your name could very quickly become dirt. Communities were smaller. You would find it quickly hard to play. Reputation as an individual mattered.
I'm diamond on this account.
Group up, let's go. We could still win this. We could still win this. No, I'm not a mercy, mate. We could still win this. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Let's go, let's go.
You're still a border and you're still in diamond. You will never get any rank, okay? You're garbage.
Now, not only can you effectively hide your reputation with things like hiding your player profile, but Blizzard actively enable it, and I think there can be a better balance between the veil of anonymity that provides, which has positive points. It gives people access to try new things. I understand why Blizzard announced it, and I understand why people would use it. I would use it maybe sometimes if I'm trying things that I feel I'm good enough on, but other people might not see that if they just judge me on my profile. But I feel that there is a balance between this anonymity and the access that gives people, but giving us all more information as a community to help all of us improve as players and challenge ourselves to improve as players. Seagull's State of Overwatch video, I agree with his perspective, or his raising one thing, but I'd probably look at it from a different perspective, and that's statistics. In Overwatch now, with the sort of private profile, and with the lack of in-game real-time stats, we basically have nothing to judge how people are performing beyond our own perception of what we see. And we have no idea of knowing how strong a player is in a particular role or anything before going into a game. Previously, all we could look at was play time and their rank. That's not even enough to see if they're a good player of a particular kind, but it was all there was. And that has been taken away from us for access and of atmosphere and in-game feeling. Now, I do understand why it's been done. I'm not saying it's universal. I'm not saying the private profile is a bad thing, but I think that the way perhaps in which it was applied was done short-term gain, but maybe long-term doesn't benefit the community in terms of improving ourselves and in terms of moving ourselves onwards. Now, this challenge is not unique to Overwatch. I'm going to quickly talk about World of Warcraft. In World of Warcraft, you form groups to tackle anything from 5-player to 30-player content. The 5-player content in dungeons, smaller dungeons, the 30-player content in big raids. These are team challenges. Now, you need a composition. You need tanks, damage dealers, healers. The harder dungeons are called Mythic Plus, and an entire separate system called Raider.io of statistics, of ratings has been born around this, because Blizzard don't provide it in-game in World of Warcraft. It's a whole outside of game system to help groups evaluate players that they add to their groups, to put together a team composition to run these challenges, whether it's a raid like Uldir that I show here, or whether it's a 5-man challenge in Mythic Plus. Now, like the Overwatch system, this system is not perfect, but it's the fact that it's had to be created that I feel is very, very interesting here. There are lovers and haters of Raider.io in WoW. This is a third party, this is not even Blizzard, but it works off APIs, off things that give stats that Blizzard deliver from in-game. Now, what it does give in WoW is another method to try and assess player experience, suitability, and whatever for a team composition outside of sheer gear quality. You have something in World of Warcraft called item level, eye level. That's the broad level as a number of the quality of the gear that I have. It's not a perfect comparison, but I'd say item level is probably equivalent to maybe a combination of playtime on heroes and maybe my rank in Overwatch. It doesn't necessarily mean if I'm Diamond and I've played most on Diva that I'm an amazing tank. It might just mean that I've put in a lot of time or something like that, but Overwatch is a bit better than WoW in this regard. Overwatch's previous system of having an open profile, having a look at a combination of, for example, game stats and rank and playtime is better than WoW system of item level, because in WoW you can get item level, you can get better gear just by putting a lot of time in. In honesty, the more time you put in, you can push your item level to a particular level without knowing how to play your class. So this is a small example of how you can have other stats available that will help you form groups in a different way and help you if there is a collective agreement to sign up to it and use it. And Raider.io exists because Blizzard don't give some of this in-game, although the stats of various things are pulled together in a way outside of game that allow this to happen. It's not perfect. It does have accusations, for example, of elitism and things like that, but the availability of these stats in general makes this possible. So coming back to Overwatch and why I feel that comparison to another Blizzard game is important, it's the putting together of groups and this social contract, whether it's immediately in a game Overwatch before it starts or whether it's a pre-made group in World of Warcraft, of how the team is going to play before it even starts and looking at people's experience to try and judge that in some kind of way. This is why I feel that the public profile being able to be hidden, the fact that it was hidden by default, I feel that was a missed opportunity. I'm not entirely sure how good a decision that was for the long-term competitive social contract and health of Overwatch competitive, but it can be changed. Now the reason for that is because if you set everyone's profile to private by default, it sets an atmosphere of opt-out. It sets an atmosphere of I can hide things and that's fine, rather than opt-in to improve things and make things better, to challenge ourselves, to say, you know what, this is me. And you know what, community, you should not be challenging people as often. You should be better and more supportive of people if they want to try new things. Now, I appreciate and understand all the reasons for having your profile hidden. There's not me saying don't hide your profile. There's not me saying that hiding profiles is bad. But Blizzard made everyone's profile default hidden. And that made it, you know, another barrier to me in the way of good team composition. Oh no, well, Blizzard hid all of our profiles, so that's fine. I feel that for the health of the community in the long term, for the health of competitive environment in the long term, it shouldn't have been. And in the short term, that is something that probably gave a lot of people a lot of short-term happiness. But I feel that that's potentially at the cost of a long-term opportunity to set a challenge to the community to be better to each other and to better themselves and ourselves. Yeah, do you know what? Your win rate on X is bad, your accuracy on Y is bad, but is it better to have the information available to us and be able to use it in some way? Could Blizzard challenge the community and ourselves to behave better, and also to challenge ourselves to improve as players as well? If that information is available to me in mid-game, now if someone is scared of being called out, they should be able to say at the beginning of the game, I'd like to play Soldier, but I don't always play Soldier. I've played a reasonable amount of them on quick play. My profile is public, you can see that, give me a shot. And if people then say no, well then you can group. I just feel that this is taking away an improvement opportunity for the community in the sake of access, rather than maybe putting the community in an overall more healthy competitive place by setting an expectation of how we should try and play, and then by challenging us as players to step forward and do that. And then the endorsement system and things can come in where we can champion players who are helping each other and where we can form groups of like-minded people. So, lore and culture outside of the game. Right, well, things have gone a bit quiet. There was a first-year marketing blitz to get Overwatch as big as it was and get new players, many animated shorts, many comics. We then had a semi-regular pattern, and then they've just been quiet for a long period of time. So people feeling that there is less lore and outside of game content, yes, I understand that. Animated shorts are expensive to make. They're in a regular pattern now of 2 a year, and we have had some other out-of-game lore, but there has been a step down since year one. Now, I think it's fair, and I've discussed this topic in an individual 20-minute video. I'm not going to gloss over it. I understand why people feel that lore has become less frequent, because it has, but I want to think about the reasons why. Now, Blizzard may have set an expectation in some people's minds, and perhaps that was a misinterpretation by some of us, and maybe Blizzard could have done more in terms of setting that expectation, so it's 50-50, that they would keep up the rate of lore and out-of-game content the same as year one. I actually believe there are reasonable reasons, as I've discussed in a separate video. I'll link it in the description below. Blizzard's other games also take resource from a central story franchise and development team. Many of the names of people who have written Overwatch comics outside of Michael Chu are on World of Warcraft Battle for Azeroth comics, the big World of Warcraft expansion that released August. Now that World of Warcraft's new expansion has been launched, I strongly believe that many of these people are going to be free to work on Overwatch again, and the Overwatch team has hired a new writer that I've covered in a different video as well. So for me, it's not so much if Overwatch has a future. I always look at, is Overwatch dying, titles with little scorn. It's not dying. It's got a very healthy future, but it's what kind of future it is, and why I titled this video, Where is Overwatch Going? And where is not only Overwatch going, but how are we as a community helping and being part of that and helping shape it? The reason that I say where, and the final reason I think, before I talk about community as part of this, there was no map at BlizzCon this year, and before that there was a developer update where Jeff said the team felt it didn't get exposure, or it didn't get the sort of spotlight or focus that maybe it would have got if it was released separately, because there's so much going on at BlizzCon. So I understand that completely. That is not less content. That is content that we'd normally seen for the past few years that I think is probably going to be announced late December, early January, in between now and the next hero, right? So, which is when it would release anyway, it's just not been announced at BlizzCon. But I think that for some people, that may have felt like less content, even though it's not really less content. Now, in public relations, content marketing terms, and I have worked in marketing in the past indeed, this is like a content drop or a PR beat, a public relations beat. It's making sure that you always have something to talk about at a regular interval so that your players are continuously interested. So instead of talking about the map at BlizzCon, let's put it at a time of year where it is going to be announced and released anyway, so that it's a bigger deal and that everyone can enjoy it a bit more. I have no problem with that. That's not less content, that's spacing out of content a bit. But where I feel that people are feeling, maybe from BlizzCon, and I've seen it mentioned in several places, that where is Overwatch going? We've had less comics. Oh, the map's being put off. Oh, the in-game events aren't getting new stuff. I think there's all of the combination of these things together has got people with a bit of a feeling of, well, is Overwatch just in maintenance mode? And is there something big coming? Or what is it? Or where is Overwatch going? People want to know what the future is as much as what is happening right now. Overwatch League, stable, going to be great. We have the Overwatch World Cup, brilliant, loads of fun. We have the in-game events with refreshes now. Now, BlizzCon, just to seal that off, I felt that it was I'm going to call it a standard BlizzCon, and that is not me being over entitled or unappreciative. I love Ash, she's so much fun. I'm going to main her as DPS because she's just brilliant. She's so much fun. I'm not really great with aiming of her, as some of this footage probably shows, but I just think she's brilliant. I love the animated short, but there was nothing chunky about future plans at all, and I will talk about how Blizzard share information and talk in many ways in a sec. So, why haven't Blizzard, or why can't Blizzard share more about their future? Well, there are the obvious reasons. They want to surprise and delight us. If we knew everything that was coming, it wouldn't be fun, right? They want to a degree, avoid competitors and competition. You don't want other people stealing your lunch, copying your homework. I think a really good example of why Blizzard may well be doubly cautious after this BlizzCon.
Is there any plans to make this playable on PC, or is this strictly mobile forever?
Are there any? The current plan is to be on mobile, both Android and iOS. We don't have any plans at the moment to do PC. Do you guys not have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
I don't know if you saw what happened with Diablo Immortal. If you're a Blizzard follower, watcher, or fan of other Blizzard games, you may well have done already. For those of you who want, Diablo Immortal was an announcement of a mobile-only game in cooperation with Blizzard's Chinese partner, NetEase. The reason that this caused so much stink in the Blizzard community, Diablo community, and outside were a few reasons. Blizzard had hyped up before BlizzCon that they were going to be, for several months, they had several Diablo projects, and it was going to be a big BlizzCon for Diablo this year. Then they released a blog a couple of weeks before BlizzCon saying, we're working on many things, we can't show you them all, but we still think you're going to be excited. Then they announced a mobile game. Now, nothing wrong with the game. Take almost the game out of it. It's the fact that Diablo is an old, historied, storied, experienced, passionate Blizzard PC community of many years, and they were all expecting an announcement for Diablo 4. And that would have been the biggest thing. And the amount of hype, Blizzard overhyped it, I think. They then maybe changed their mind, maybe not. If they weren't going to announce a new Diablo PC project, they then announced a mobile game, and that stuck in the craw of people. Understandably, I think, because of the hype beforehand. If they hadn't hyped it up so much beforehand that they were going to announce something, then I think it was a mismanagement of communication. And, Blizzard never said they were going to announce Diablo 4 at BlizzCon directly, but they really, really hyped up that they were going to have Diablo announcements at BlizzCon, and then they made it this mobile game, which was kind of not something that I think your core Diablo fan will be interested in. But as I said earlier in this thing, we look to the east, if we look to the mobile market and the way that gaming is changing, Diablo Immortal could be a great game in it of itself. The other thing that it struck in the wider Blizzard community was, is Blizzard focusing on mobile titles now? Is it microtransactional mobile? Are we looking at more free-to-play? Is this the way that Blizzard is going, rather than the historic, big, crafted, story-led, often single-player experience? And this, for all of the positives and challenges in it, I think leads me to my final point. How we as a community in Blizzard come together around Overwatch and things to do with it. Now, new heroes and new balance and everything to do with lore. There are so many passionate debates and opinions about everything to do with Overwatch, inside the game and outside the game, inside competitive and outside of competitive, and that's awesome. That's a healthy community. But we have to be careful as a community, and Blizzard have to be careful, as I've said with the Diablo example, as to how they communicate with us. It works both ways, this is a collaborative thing in many, many ways. Now, Blizzard have to try, and they want to try, and indeed have been very, very reactive and engaged with us as a community around Overwatch, in terms of suggestions, in terms of feedback, in terms of how we feel about meta, lore, story, skins, all kinds of different things. But at the same time, they need to try and look to the future and make a future for Overwatch beyond the short term. Blizzard want to respond and react to us as players, but at the same time, if they do that too much, they can't promise long term so much. Otherwise, people will be disappointed if some of those things don't come to pass. An example of this was a comment on the Overwatch subreddit the other day. Now, I'm not criticising why the commenter has brought this up, but they said, play of the game 2.0. Hey, that was mentioned ages ago. What's happened to it? Why isn't it going on? And as a result, lots of people saying, hey, that'd be great. It's very easy to think of things that haven't happened and sort of forget all of the things that have actually happened and been changed. The most we get, in many ways, we get dev updates from the Overwatch team, videos on YouTube, and a lot of players of other games are envious of us as an Overwatch community. Even other Blizzard games, they're envious of the amount of communication that the Overwatch team has with us. We do get some small comments about the near future, mostly. We get, these are things we'd like to work on, here are things we're looking to do, and occasionally we'll get comments on things. This doesn't help sometimes towards knowing what the long-term vision is for Overwatch. It's more issue by issue, short-term. I think that one of the reasons people feel fatigued right now is, outside of all of the above, a feeling that things are going quieter or slowing down in in-game content and out-of-game content. So take this as an example. We will get Jeff in a dev update saying, expect less big updates to seasonal events, bar the skins, as we look at quality of life. That was a thing that has been said in the past few months. So that is the most we get in terms of future vision, in terms of where Overwatch is going. That's kind of a heads up that's repeated a couple of times subtly. So we've been told that Christmas, Winter Wonderland is not going to be markedly different from how it has been because they're focusing on quality of life and other things. This has been a trend for the past 2-3 months in developer updates. Now we're in the 3rd year of the game. We're getting event refreshes with skins. We're told that quality of life is being focused on. We can see that with patches and tweaks to heroes. Okay, this is all great. This is good and healthy for the game. But my question is, what is coming in the future? What is the long-term vision? And can we see something about that as a community without us as a community jumping down Blizzard's throat if they don't deliver on all of it? Because sometimes we do that as a community. And sometimes we need to give Blizzard a bit more room to be able to talk about what they'd like to see in the future without us expecting that it's all going to happen. And I'm as guilty of that as anyone. I'm not throwing stones inside a glass house here. I know that I'm as guilty of that as anyone as a content creator, and content creators can be like, you mentioned this a year ago, why is nothing happening? And we as a community can be like, oh yeah, so take this as an example. Jeff has just said that there's a plan for comics. Well, what's the plan for comics and why can't we talk about it? Maybe they're a bit worried about a Diablo Immortal. I hope personally for another Archives event. They do take a huge amount of work. I was very privileged to be flown by Blizzard over to have a look at Retribution and to talk to developers about it, which was amazing. And understanding how really the Overwatch game engine wasn't built for making that kind of thing, but they're trying to make it work for us. Now, I do wonder whether bigger work is going on something else. I've got nothing to back that up with. I've not been told anything, no intelligence to suggest that any other kind of Overwatch game is being made, but I love to think that there is. And I do wonder whether there is from external things we've seen rather than any direct information I have heard. There was mentioned also at BlizzCon, like they're working on another big system for next year, some other big system or big functionality. To finish this up, and I know I've talked on for a long time, but I think all of this is very important in looking where Overwatch is. There is a long-term plan. There has to be one. Overwatch is in a solid place in terms of its fundamentals and got very, very positive signs in terms of esports. As I said, look at all the big merch deals. Big brands like this do not make a toy or a figure in conjunction with Blizzard. They work half years, years out in terms of fulfillment and creating products. They will not invest if they don't believe there's a long-term future in Overwatch and they aren't exciting plans in the future that are going to sell them. Like, take this Hasbro Mercy figure that has just been announced. Hasbro would probably want to make all 26 of those, right? And they're not going to invest in all of that if they don't see and they haven't been shown an exciting future and healthy fundamentals for Overwatch. These products might have been worked on for the last year, maybe a couple of years, and Hasbro and Blizzard will have a plan that hopefully extends many years into the future. Because we love Overwatch so much, we need to make sure that we as a community are supportive, but also constructively critical. And we don't hang Blizzard for things that they want to try and talk about more of the future with us, and then if they can't deliver it on time or when they thought for some reason, we can't then beat them around the head with that. It's not a question if Overwatch has a healthy and exciting future, it's just a question of how that future forms and how we and Blizzard are together with it, I feel. Now, Overwatch in 2019, I feel, has a real spiritual fork in the road. It's going to really, this year is going to be huge in terms of showing us how we as a community contribute to Overwatch future and how Blizzard make Overwatch's future move forward. Personally, on many of these things, I like to see Blizzard try and challenge us more as a community to improve ourselves both as teammates and as players and give us the structures and maybe mechanisms, maybe systems to do that. I think we as players need to reflect on pushing ourselves forward a bit and how we can be better teammates and just create a better team and sort of game environment for us all as well. In terms of the lore, culture and events and things outside of Overwatch, well, Blizzard have set up a wonderful universe here and they're slowly delivering on parts of it. I think a lot of people would like to see more regular and fast updates and more stuff more often. We just want to see it. How can that happen? What is the plan for comics? Let us know. Tell us about it. I really, really want to see how that happens. Let's see whether Overwatch moves its lore and story forward in a regular and systematic way. If it's, regular comics every X, Y, and Z, I'm cool with that. that's awesome. If it's one comic every X months, I'm still cool with that, because we know that it's coming. We know that things are progressing at a particular rate alongside the animated shorts, alongside the in-game archives event, if that continues. Will there be another Overwatch game? I think there has to be, but it's going to be a separate game to existing Overwatch. It's going to be a different kind of game, because the Overwatch current engine, I think it's hard for them to bolt something on like a story mode to the existing game. I reckon, this is pure speculation, I think there's a different Overwatch game of some kind in development at Blizzard, and I pray to the gods of lore, to the lore fathers, all shiny and chrome, that story is a huge part of that, because I really want it to be. But new Overwatch short stories, novels, all of that kind of stuff. I really hope there's a big announcement for Overwatch story of some kind, and the resumption of comics in 2019. Now, last but not least, what is the priority? Are we prioritising access in competitive environment, or are we trying to focus on community improvement? Are we thinking about things like balance in the right way? There's always going to be change. Is it how we react to that change and how we kind of communicate with Blizzard around it that will determine how we will feel about this in future, as well as what Blizzard actually do? It could be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. And last but not least, how can we as a community just think about how we communicate with each other and with Blizzard? Various gaming communities can eat themselves. It is not a question of we are right and other people are wrong a lot of the time. We can all have our own opinions, and whether we have a particular headcanon in the lore, or whether we agree or disagree that people playing one particular hero is a solid thing or not, or whether we think Brigitte is a problem or stun is a problem or not at our particular level of play. It's all about how we acknowledge the differences and agreements that we have, and how we communicate with Blizzard around things, and how we allow Blizzard, I think, to communicate maybe further out, maybe talk about the future without them feeling as if they're going to get struck over the head about it. I think that can help Blizzard and can help us as well, just something worth thinking about. I think Overwatch is in a real solid place, and there's a lot of evidence to support that. Sure, things can be improved, they always can, but that improvement, I think, goes both ways. Blizzard can provide the tools, but they can't tool and systemize everything. We as a community have to consider our relationship and attitude with each other when playing Overwatch, be it competitive or quick play, and being members of a community and a wider community. How we engage with Blizzard is an important part of that. And you know what, whatever path Overwatch goes down, it's not a path that can be trod by one party alone. Sure, let's be grateful for what we enjoy in the nearly 3 years of community and fun that we've had at points, and a lot of the time, I'm sure. Let's never stop actually being constructively critical, and constructive is the important word. Try and shape the future of Overwatch for the better together with Blizzard. But we have to be mindful of the way in which we go about that, how we conduct ourselves in games, and the consequences it has, and how if we and others want to enjoy the game for a long time to come, that we allow each other to do that and help each other to do that, and how Blizzard can work with us on that. What do you think of all this? Please do share with me all of your thoughts, comment. Cheers for tuning in. Thanks to my patrons on Patreon. Hey, without my patrons, this video just wouldn't exist. I couldn't spend the time doing it. If you like what I do and you'd like to see me cover not only Overwatch but more lore, I'm thinking of challenging myself, improving myself as a content creator, and sharing more of you of things that I enjoy beyond Overwatch and Overwatch lore. Although Overwatch lore interactions and voice lines and all of the things you enjoy on this channel will always be here. But if you want to check that out, see how you could support me from just $1 a month, check out patreon.com/Hammeh. There's loads of little perks and benefits you can get there as well. And the future of my channel is going to be around Patreon and around what we as a community want to see. But Overwatch is always going to be here. Don't worry about that. Check out my playlist from what Overwatch lore interactions and voice lines, everything to do with Overwatch and its history, and lots more stuff besides. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Have a wonderful holiday season, and stay tuned for loads of Overwatch videos, but also videos about lore in other areas and other things and other games. Change is always going to happen, but Overwatch is always going to stay here. I have a separate channel as well that I've linked for experiments in the comments below as well. Take care, guys. Catch you in the next video, and take it easy.